are you? Hope you're having a great Friday. Some folks are still coming in, but I'm going to get started because all of you were here on time and I don't want to hold you up. I'm Jordan. We're going to be spending the next little bit together. Before we get into it, if you'd be so kind just to go to the chat and say, I can hear you, I can see you, can you see my screen? Always good just to make sure things are working okay. Just say yeah in the chat. If you don't know where the chat is, find it now. We'll use it a bunch. Sweet. Okay, great. I'm coming to you live from a hotel room, full disclosure, because there was some flooding in my house and some work is being done. So if you hear any funky noises in the background, it's because I'm literally next to the elevator. So such is life. All right. So we're going to talk about stress today. Before we get into it, I'm just going to share a little bit of context about why we're here together, why I'm here. So I do a lot of work with students and young professionals in navigating mental health. I run a company called Shift. We have a bunch of facilitators that do mental health education at workplaces, on campuses, in organizations all over North America. We also run a therapy practice that focuses on students and young professionals downtown Toronto. So this is something that we come at both very tactically from an educational lens, but also very pragmatically as well from a therapy lens. So this is going to be a cool session. But what I want to tell you off the top is like, I'm here as an active learner as well. Stress is kind of like golf. It's like a lifetime to figure it out, and you never really get that great at it. But what I have learned as someone that has studied this stuff extensively for years and years and taught it all over the place is having that curious beginner's mindset is tremendously valuable, because what works to manage stress for me may be very different than for you. And so my hope from this session is that we can talk about what stress is, how it shows up for each of us, but then pull out a couple nuggets of things that we can start to use immediately in our own lives to help us better manage it, okay? So that's where we're going. If you have any questions or anything you want to share during, use the chat, okay? I do have it, so I'm looking at my laptop screen now, but I do have the chat window open and to the right so I can see your messages. So throw in any questions or anything else and I will get to them periodically, okay? Let's get going. So when I look at this, I kind of think of life. Life is chaotic, life is messy, life is imperfect. And one of the funny things about life right now is looking back 7 months ago, the world seemed so much different. And even at that point, 7 months ago, life was still challenging. There were still things that we were experiencing. There was strain on our relationships. We were feeling academic pressure. We were having struggles with life transitions, life changes, whatever, you name it. And COVID has kind of just taken anything that we had experienced before and amplified it. It's like what used to just feel kind of like this haze of everyday life and stress has now turned into a much more complicated web. And there's very good reasons for that we'll get to it when we talk about the DNA of stress. But I want you to put yourself in the place right now as we're here and think, man, how has my life changed? How have I risen to the occasion of having to adapt during COVID? But also, let's focus on something that's a little bit more challenging to think of. Like, is there anything that you've experienced in your world that you feel like has gotten worse during COVID? Do you feel like you're more stressed out? Do you feel like you're more behind? Do you feel like you're having more anxiety about school, money, relationships, whatever? And if you were navigating anything particularly painful before, challenging before, do you feel like it's gotten worse? Or maybe it stayed the same? And maybe it gives us this sense of hopelessness because we're just in this kind of everlasting pseudo social distanced new world. Things are complicated right now, okay? And to show that things are complicated for each of us, aside from just me, is being poetic about it, we're going to do a very cool little exercise. And my goal by the end of the session is that we can take the chaos of stress that many of us feel that looks like this and to get some skills so that we can create things that course correct for us, so that we can make sense of this mess. To do that, we're going to do a very cool thing. We did a version of this on your campus last year, which feels like a million years ago now, of course, where we have this very cool anonymous platform where you can text anything you want into it, and the messages are totally anonymous, and they show up on the screen here. And this is a great way, even virtually, for us to open up about where we're at without the fear of shame or embarrassment. How it works is pretty simple. There's a number, that number right there, that I'm going to give to you again in a moment. And when you send a message in there, it goes to an application that I have on my phone right here in my back pocket. And then I literally click the messages just to show up here. And the ideas of the messages is that they should be very brief and to the point. So I'm going to ask you a question or two that's very pointed relating to stress and where you're at right now. And in a sentence or two max, respond. And this is how the messages look when they come in. It's not black and white. I don't know why I have a black and white image in here. Like, we're in 2020, we have color now. It's crazy. But it's just an opportunity to let little nuggets like this out. This screen capture here, notice that it's just like the message and then a timestamp. So that's it. There's no gotcha. It's not like I click on it and all of a sudden it's like, oh, like, yeah, I said it was anonymous, but jokes, it's actually not. Like, there's none of that, okay? What I want to highlight, if you're wondering what these messages are from, I have the cool job of working with groups of all shapes and sizes. And I actually was at this, like, it's kind of like a teacher summit for some of the top teachers in Peel School Board 2 or 3 years ago. And I asked them, what's the big lie you're living as a teacher? Which is a phenomenal question to ask any teacher, because they're like, oh. And if you look at the submissions, they got really honest with me. Like, the last two always really bring something over me. Like, lately I'm forcing myself to drive to work and trying to smile. I'm always on edge and I hate it. And I'm not raising kids and students that are hardworking, responsible, and intelligent citizens. So you see how this exercise of sharing anonymously can bring these moments of just like total bluntness, because we're not hiding. And so that's what I hope we can do here right now. So take out your phone. If you don't want to participate, you don't have to, but I would love for you to, okay? You can take out your phone and then throw in this number. So open up just a new text, okay? So this is the number. We change the numbers up all the time. So this is the number du jour. It's 647-697-7407. Make sure you have that right. You don't want to like text a stranger. So 647-697-7407. Or if you don't have texting handy, but you still want to participate, or if you want to just do it from a website instead, you can go to share.yourbiglie.com, okay? And it all goes to the same place. Our program, our youth program for kids and adults is called What's Your Big Lie? So hence the yourbiglie.com. So open up one of those two, okay? And I'm gonna give you a minute to write this down. So I want you to think about what's keeping you up at night right now. And what I mean by that is not for anyone that has like a R-rated mind, that's not where I'm going. What I mean is the last time you were tossing and turning at 2, 3 in the morning, when all you knew you had to do was fall asleep, but you couldn't because your head was just racing, your mind was racing, you were just tossing and turning and looking at the clock and looking at your phone and just feeling anxious and stressed and nervous. What was on your mind? What was going on for you? What was keeping you up at night in that moment? And if you're stuck, think about the last time that happened, okay? Just put yourself back in that moment. Maybe it was last night. Maybe it was the night before. Maybe it was last week. Maybe it was last month. Is it a sense of fear, sense of remorse, nervousness, anxiety? Did something happen? Was something about to happen? What was that for you? Take about 45 seconds and write it down and hit send. Okay, the number is at the bottom of the screen there again. I'll be quiet for like another 30 seconds. Give it a shot, okay? Another 15 seconds or so. Three, two, one. Phone's down. It's like the end of an exam. So I want to show you something. So this is what I see. Like I said, it doesn't go to my actual phone. It goes to an app I have on my phone. But these messages are from, I'll put these up on the actual screen in a sec, but like these are from you right here, right now. And that's really cool. So thank you. Thank you for taking a jump and giving this a shot. Thank you for trusting yourself. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for trusting each other. I know this is tough because we're all physically removed. If we were in a room together and could all read each other's body language and see each other's eyes, this would feel a little more comfortable. So whatever you're feeling right now, if you're feeling a little, yeah, that's okay. In fact, actually, I'm curious, go to the chat for a second. So not the text, but the chat in Zoom here, and just share in a couple words, like what's going through your mind right now? Be totally honest. Is it a sense of relief? Is it a sense of anxiety? Is it a sense of blah? How do you feel to let something like that go, knowing that your peers are here on this webinar with you? What's going through your mind? Just share it in a word or two in the Zoom chat here. Okay, yeah, relief, but also kind of, yeah, totally, it's a spectrum, right? And 2 or 3 or 4 different emotions can exist at the same time. Anyone else? Thank you, Wendy. When you share in Zoom, select all panelists and attendees, or everyone, not just all panelists. A bunch of people are sending me messages, and I appreciate that. But select everyone so that we can all see each other. Okay, I'll just read some of them aloud that are just being sent to me. So sort of anxious, facing my fear head on, for sure. Didn't really want to think about it because it was so recent, but maybe it'll help put it out in front of me. Absolutely. A sense of anxiety mixed with fear of being judged. Absolutely. Okay. And one of you said, I'm all right because I'm really sleepy. Totally fair. Okay, let's go to your submissions here. So I'm going to put these up one at a time, and they're going to come from the top of the screen. And we're just going to take them in, okay? I'm not going to make a bunch of remarks about them or anything like that. We're just going to look at them together here. So here we go. Okay, so make it all bigger. Just take these in. I know I'm going quickly. Read them as fast as you can, but you don't have to catch every word. Catch the essence of these, okay? There's still a bunch more. I want to make sure I got all of them. There's a bunch more. Okay. There's still a couple more in here, and the list is jumping around. So if I missed any, it's just me missing them here. But look at this. This is amazing. Thank you for sharing. Oh my goodness. So go back to the Zoom chat now again and tell me what it feels like to see these messages on the screen. Okay. How does it feel to see them now? Just going to scroll through slowly here to share what's going through your mind as you see these. These are your people. These are your peers. These are your friends. Relatable, reassuring, feeling like you're not alone, and it's all pretty common. Comforting to know other people feel the same way I do. A lot of people have similar concerns and responsibilities. Totally. So first of all, again, thank you for sharing. This is huge. Secondly, many of you are pointing at something that's really on point, which is often we believe that we are the only one that's struggling with something, when in reality, many people share that. And it's not just like many people in the world or, many people in the province. It's like, no, the people like in my classes, my friends, my family, we're all experiencing similar things. And sometimes we don't talk about them, we don't share them. And when that happens, we tend to convince ourselves that we're the broken ones, that we are the ones that are so bad at coping that everyone else must have it figured out, but why don't I? Right? So thank you. If we had more time, I do longer sessions where we have the opportunity to reply back to any of these. But I just want to create a quick invitation now before I go away from the screen. If anyone wants to share in the chat, like anything that you want to say, anything that you want to share, or just send a message of affirmation to anybody, go for it. Like, so if you see a message that's up here that you think, oh, I totally feel that. I relate to that in my own way. I want you to know that you're not alone. Just say that in the chat. Describe the message. To the person that said, I feel I'm the only one that's concerned and attached to my friendships, say to that person, I do the same thing. You're not alone. So just go to the Zoom chat, send a message of love, a message of understanding, a message of kindness. I know it's cheesy, but it's important. Oh, those are old ones. No one wants to send a message of love and understanding? There we go. Thank you, Wendy. School is tough. Yeah, we're all in this together, for sure. Tanishi, that is wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. So the hope of this is to show that the stress that you're experiencing is unique to you for sure, because stress is, as I said, it's unique to any of us. Well, I don't want to share it. It's unique to all of us in how we experience our existence. But it's not so unique that other people will never understand. And one of the most essential things about working on our stress is the shared acknowledgement that it's not just you that's broken. It's that everyone is in this together and that we live in a very stressed out, incredibly complicated time. Okay. I'm just going to reopen my chat here, my chat window. You folks can't see this because it's in Zoom. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's talk about stress, okay? I know talking about stress is stressful, but so when we think of stress, generally speaking, we think of the bad stress, but there's such a thing as good stress too, okay? That kind of stress comes about on a curve called the Yerkes-Dodson law of psychological performance. And put very simply, there's a reason why NBA athletes, if you were watching the Raps play last week in that heartbreaking game, at times, maybe you were looking at them and saying, they seem really relaxed, really slow. Why aren't they making those shots? Why aren't they, hustling a little bit more? Why is Siakam making all those turnovers? What's going on? So one way of looking at that is to put a sports psychology hat on. And it all stems from this basic principle that in order for us to be at peak performance, we actually have to feel a little bit of stress. But the key is to feel a little bit of stress and not a lot of stress. Okay, so there's this curve that's all about performance. And so think about it in your own case. So those days where you don't really feel terribly motivated, maybe you're sort of like half asleep, you're just kind of going through the motions, you're not probably at your most productive, right? Whereas those other days where you have maybe a lot to do, or there's a lot going on, and it's like I gotta bang, bang, bang this thing out, and then I gotta move on to this other thing, and then blah, 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 run around, and you feel like you're just like in the state of focus or flow throughout the day. That is you being in optimal performance there. And that comes from a little bit of stress arousal, okay? So stress is not necessarily always bad. The bad part of stress is when we get to the point of where our judgment is totally impaired, or we can't function, where we have sustained stress. Now, when we have sustained high stress, we think of stress as something in the moment, but in fact, sustained stress can lead to a great deal of mental illnesses, excuse me. It can also lead to degenerative impacts on our brains. It actually, over time, it rewires the gray matter in our brain. And what we're seeing now with new research is that early symptoms of Alzheimer's, for example, can be seen as a direct correlation to a level of sustained high stress. So stress ain't good, like in its most aggressive form. Stress is fine in moderation. And one of the things that we have to acknowledge is that life is stressful. Things are complicated. And so stress is unavoidable. But our response to it, well, we have a decision around that. And stress tends to thrive when there's a lot of uncertainty. So let's also acknowledge the moment that we are in, okay? Anytime that it's not sure how long a stressor is going to last, it tends to become more stressful. So if you're feeling stressed in the moment right now, coping with our virtual social distanced reality with your learning, one thing that is probably adding to that stress is not being sure what's going to happen next semester or over the summer or even next fall, right? And then when we think about the wider disruption of our social and support networks and the things that we typically get energized from, like in-person social interactions or sports or athletics or whatever, all of that is now gone. And then on top of that, we are piling on grief. And grief is a whole other beast. But collectively, it's just important to acknowledge that this moment is hard. This moment is stressful. And there are reasons why, maybe for some of us, we feel like stress is compounding rather than just staying the same. Okay, I'm looking at chat here for a sec because there was a bunch in there. Oh, great. A bunch of messages just came in, affirmations. I love it. Okay. So let's go to the chat box really quickly. I want to know right now, do you have one or two things that you default to that totally help you manage your stress? And maybe they don't manage it effectively, but maybe it's things that you do because you're like, yeah, this will help my stress. Like go for a run, listen to a song, watch YouTube, get lost in YouTube, watch Netflix, hide away and cry. Like what helps you manage stress right now? Just throw it out in there. Throw it out in the chat really quickly. Running and biking, watching Netflix, guitar, yeah, totally getting that creative juices flowing. Talking to parents, for sure. Using that family support network. Daily walks or be in nature. K-pop and dancing, I love it. Looking back on my counseling notes, yeah. Talking to my friends, poetry, great. Okay, so one of the reasons why I asked this question is there's two reasons. One is to show the diversity of things that we default to right now, right? Like there's quite a few different things that falls under this, depending on who we are and what we do. So that's the first thing. The second thing is some of us often have a hard time answering this question, right? Because we default to like one or two activities, which is fine, but many of us also may think like, oh, I'm just gonna say something for saying something, but I don't actually know what really helps me manage my stress, because my stress just feels like this big web, and I don't really know how to get through the haze of it all. So it's okay if you don't know what really helps you. And for those of you that do know what helps you, one of the things that we're going to invite during this is how can you do a lot more of it? Because stress effectively, so without going way too into cognitive behavioral therapy, effectively everything in our reality is linked, okay? And we can sense stress in very unique ways depending on who we are. We can feel it from a purely emotional perspective, we can feel it in a physical way, or we can look at it in a behavioral way. And very likely, any of us are going to have a combination of different things. You know, I feel, for example, when I'm extremely stressed, I feel very irritable. I feel extremely fatigued. And I find that I exercise a lot of avoidance. That is me. That is classic me, right? Irritability, like I'm going through the physical list. I'm like, I do a lot of those things, but definitely fatigue and definitely avoidance. Like those are big three. And as you look at this, chances are you're thinking, okay, yeah, oh, I totally do that. I totally do that. I totally do that. So why that is important is, first of all, we need to recognize within us how stress impacts us. So how does it actually show up for you? I want you to take a mental note of that. How does it show up for you emotionally, physically, and behaviorally? Okay. Do you find that you have a certain overwhelming emotion that comes in? Do you find that you have one or more physical conditions that comes out, right? Do you find that your behavior changes in the moment as you respond to stress? Now, the reason why these three things happen is in my longer seminar on stress, we talk about the building blocks of stress over the last 50 years of research. But in effect, we are now at a phase of studying stress that's called the transactional school of thought, okay? And the transactional school of thought is basically this. When we encounter a stressor, so one specific thing that may cause us stress, our brains ask ourselves a bunch of questions in a split second, and it happens in our subconscious. And the questions are a lot like this. Will this thing harm me or challenge me to be better? If it's going to harm me, do I have the capacity to deal with this thing based upon the resources that I have in this moment? Okay, so there's this assessment almost. Is this thing going to be good or bad? Is it good stress or is it bad stress? And then can I actually deal with this with everything else that's happening on my plate? And then the third question is, if so, how? What am I going to do? And then if you answer the negative to those things, if you're like, I can't deal with this thing, I don't have the resources, I don't know what to do, that's when overwhelm or panic tends to step in, because you don't have the resources that you need. But what you will see in those moments of when your brain goes through that thought process is you will notice that you will have a physical symptom will come on very quickly, your emotional state will change, or you'll have a behavioral change, or all three within a moment. This is the building block of cognitive behavioral therapy, which is effectively the understanding that our thoughts, our moods, and our behaviors are inextricably connected at all points in time. But I'm not going to go too deep in that right now. So the question is, what do we do with this? Okay, so stress is hard. Stress is unavoidable. Stress is unique. So how can we possibly deal with it? Oh, hold on a second. Housekeeping. I actually have a late checkout. I'll be out of here. Yeah, no worries. Did you hear me tell them that I have a late checkout? I do. This is too funny. Okay, so let's look at a couple things. Okay, so I want to get this. We can get a lot into the research behind stress, but I want to focus on the actions now because we are halfway through this thing. So first of all, we're probably, as we sit around and watch Zoom all day, many of us are probably feeling a little stressed right now. Talking about stress can be stressful. So I want us to take a breath. There's this wonderful breath exercise, and that is really, really good. And for anyone that doesn't do meditation or mindfulness, this is not meditation or mindfulness. It can sort of help with those things, but it's not that. So don't do like the roll your eyes thing, like, yeah, I downloaded Headspace or Calm, but it didn't work for me. This is something that's great in a moment, okay? This is a particularly great exercise when you are about to do something that you know you are going to find stressful, like do a paper, finish an exam, whatever, okay? Box breathing. If you haven't heard of box breathing, it is an amazingly effective tool that takes only a second. The best way to do it is you can sit down or stand up wherever you are. I'm standing right now, and you look at the palm of your hand, okay? And you put your finger on your palm in like the bottom left-hand corner-ish. And you are going to breathe while you draw a box on your hand. Why is that important? Because for many of us, doing breath exercises while having our eyes closed is extremely threatening to us, especially if you are more on the hunter versus the gatherer spectrum. If you find that you're very type A, very go-getter, like to have control, closing your eyes and doing breath work can make you feel very vulnerable, okay? So that's why it's important that you have this visual stimuli. Also, it gives you a sense of control of where you're at. It demonstrates your breath. So put your finger on your palm in your bottom left corner. Do this with me now, okay? I don't know what you're doing right now, but do this with me. And I want you to inhale for 4 seconds, okay? And you're gonna move your finger up your palm. So we're gonna start and then inhale for 4 seconds. Inhale for 4 seconds. And then you're gonna go across the top of your palm, hold for 4 seconds. So hold, 3, 4. Exhale, go down your palm. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold again. 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to count it out. I want you to do it. Okay, so we're going to start. Inhale, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Notice I'm just drawing a box on my hand as I go. So you can do this, you know, not that we're in public places writing exams right now, but you can do it in that context. You can do it while you're on the bus, you can do it while you're commuting, you can do it at home, you can do it with friends, and no one's any the wiser. You're literally just looking at your palm and doing this. So let's do it one more time, okay? And do it with some passion. And breathe in however you want to breathe in. Just do it slowly. I recommend breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth. That's me, but whatever's comfortable for you. Okay, so bottom corner. Okay, ready? Let's do this. 3, 2, 1. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. One more time. How long should you be doing this for? Forever. If you do 3 rounds of this, you will feel markedly different, typically. So it doesn't take long. So it's literally counting to 16, 3 to 4 times. So a minute or 2 is how that sort of plays out. So next time you're stressed in the moment and you're trying to find your feet, you're trying to figure out where to start. Say for example, you just feel like you have this like never-ending to-do list. You don't know where to even start. I want you to stop and do this exercise, okay? Because you are slowing down your breathing, you're slowing down your heart rate, and you are focusing on your breath. And when you do that, all of a sudden, a lot of the tension that you're holding in your body will be released. And it will enable you, not necessarily to get through a stressful moment in its entirety, but it's going to slow you down enough that you're going to be able to critically think about what you have to do. And if you can't start there, you're going to have a really hard time dealing with a stressor. Okay? So that's a great exercise. There's a bunch of them. I often don't have the instructions on the screen here, but I love one that's like basically alternate nostril breathing, which is great, where you breathe in through one nostril, then you switch and then exhale through the other, and makes your airway goes very slow. There's also a great one that Hoffman, the Iceman, uses for breath work, which is basically when you take rapid breaths in 15-second increments. So you go like for 15 seconds, almost like you're a dog panting, and then you pause for 10 and then do it again. Any of those are good. And they all do effectively the same thing. This is accessible no matter where you are on the mindfulness spectrum, okay? So this is something that is important to start with. Why I mention this now is I can talk all day about why stress shows up, how it shows up. Now we're switching to things that you can do. And what you can do is get control of the present moment. That's where you need to start. And in order to do that, you gotta slow down your thought process, and breath work does that, okay? And then in this moment that we are here together, you need to tell yourself that this moment is safe. The present moment is safe. We are here in this moment and nothing else is going on. We are here, we are present. Okay? Just ground yourself a bit. You don't have to be too, you're not turning into a yoga guru or anything, but the present moment is safe. And that is because our anxiety is future-based. We feel anxious about things to come, right? So pulling back and just getting right here, right now, allows us to observe our thoughts. And when we can observe our thoughts, we can conquer our stress. So how do we do that? Well, when you are feeling stressed, you are likely exhibiting one of these 4 unhelpful thinking styles, okay? And so these 4 unhelpful thinking styles, I want you to think of them as a sign that you need to take a moment and find your breath, okay? Because if we go back for a moment, in a stressful moment, you're probably not going to run down the checklist of being like, oh man, I'm totally irritable, I have insomnia, and I'm being avoidant right now. Like you're not going through it like that. But in a stressful moment when it comes up, you may think in a very binary way, ooh, I'm feeling a little bit of stress, or you might notice yourself doing one of these. And I like teaching people about the unhelpful thinking styles we fall into, because it's something that we all share, A, which is very powerful. But secondly, it's less threatening to look at it this way. Like, oh, I'm doing that thinking thing again. Instead of, oh, I'm an anxious ball, I'm a mess, right? Because we treat our thoughts like they are facts, but our thoughts are not the facts at all. They're just our thoughts. They're stories we tell ourselves. So when we are stressed, we tend to start to do some of these things. And there are actually 12 different unhelpful thinking styles in total, but these four are seen an awful lot with populations that are highly driven. And if you are at Waterloo, and if you are here on this session right now, you are probably a highly driven person. So I'm gonna run down them really quickly, okay? I want you, again, to treat each of these unhelpful thinking styles, whenever they show up for you, whenever one of them does, you treat it as a sign of, ooh, I'm probably getting pretty stressed right now, okay? So all or nothing thinking is when we oscillate between everything is hunky-dory and everything's falling apart. And, or, I'm doing great, I got a handle on this, everything's perfect, blah, blah, blah. So like, oh, I'm a total failure, everything's falling apart. And you can oscillate between those two extremes very quickly. It can happen in a matter of minutes, it can happen in a matter of hours, a matter of days. The pace is very different for anyone. I'm a very all or nothing thinking guy. I go from one side of feeling really good about life to, oh my goodness, everything's falling apart. There's not a lot in between. So when I catch myself doing that, I'm like, right, I'm doing that because that is my, my physiological and mental response to stressors that I'm experiencing. I use that as a sign. The second is using a mental filter. For anyone that's ever put a video of themselves on YouTube and it's gotten comments, you will know that more than likely you're fixated on like the one negative one relative to like the 20 positive ones, right? That is using a mental filter where you're only looking for certain kinds of evidence to meet a belief you have about yourself and your worth. The third is jumping to conclusions, and that's when we try to tell the future. We try to mind read what other people are thinking. We like to invent these narratives that give us a sense of control or clarity. We feel these often in social situations. If you experience social anxiety, if you see someone and you're like, hey, I haven't seen you in a while, how are you? You wanna get together for lunch? And if they're just like not there with you, if you feel like you're kind of snubbed by them, maybe they're like, oh, hey, good to see you, I gotta go. Like you think, oh, they just snubbed me. That jerk. When in reality, they may be having the worst day of their life. You don't know, right? But we tell ourselves that we can read their minds because it gives us a sense of control. And then the fourth is a catastrophizing, which is different than all or nothing thinking because in this, you're kind of at like a medium baseline a lot of the time, you know, feeling a little stressed, and then something will happen and, like I'm gonna get kicked out of school, and if I get kicked out of school, then I'm never gonna get a job, and if I never get a job, I'm never gonna be able to pay rent. If I can't pay rent, I'm gonna have to move back home into my parents' basement. If I move into my parents' basement, I'm gonna have to adopt a cat to keep me warm. And then you just like basically like all roads lead to you living in a basement with a bunch of cats. Not saying that's a bad thing, some of you may be into that. Any of these things come up for us, right? Like we all do all of them, but typically people gravitate towards one or two. So if you would like, share it in the chat. Which ones like resonate with you? Which ones do you find yourself doing? And Vanessa, great question just came in. How can we overcome guilt for taking breaks? I will show you. You can overcome guilt for taking breaks by appreciating that your breaks are actually making you productive. And there's a way that I can show you to measure that. I'll come back to that in a little bit. So go to the chat right now. Let's normalize this. Which of these unhelpful thinking styles do you tend to gravitate towards? Using a mental filter, thank you, Wendy. All or nothing, jumping to conclusion, 2 to 3, sometimes 4, yeah, like, cool. All 4, all of them, yeah. We all do all of them, but we'll find that we'll have a couple go-tos typically. So I'm gonna send out, I have all of your email addresses. So I'm gonna send out this worksheet afterwards. It's a little bit bigger than just this. And I know, I know you're thinking in your head, cool, you're gonna send me like a PDF and an email. I'm totally gonna download that. Seriously, download it, put it on your desktop. And if you wanna get into this stuff, if you really wanna control your stress, you need to track for a couple days how often you do this, because it'll blow your mind. Because again, when you exhibit these unhelpful thinking styles, it is your response to feeling a sense of overwhelm. Overwhelm comes when you are experiencing a whole lot of stress. And when you are in a situation where the demands that are placed on you are more than the resources you have. And we default to these unhelpful thinking styles in those moments. So if you track it happening, just with like a little, like on a sticky note next to your computer, oh, I'm doing the all or nothing thing again. Just mark it down. What you can measure gets managed. And that's the first part of stress, okay? Sure, someone else asked about time management, taking breaks. For sure, I can definitely do that. Okay, So let's keep going here. Okay, so what I just covered is two important building blocks, okay? So number one is just remember the breath work, really important in a stressful moment that you figure out what's going on. Secondly, being aware of the thinking pattern to give you that trigger is really critical. I should actually have these in reverse order. If you notice that you're doing one of these, I want you to stop and do this, okay? Believe me, stop, do this, and then mark it down on a sheet that you're doing one of the unhelpful thinking styles. And do that for 1 week, and I promise it will change forever how you deal with stress. Because we don't track this stuff. We just let it go. We just are in the moment. We treat stress as if it's binary. It is not binary. There are so many shades of stress and how it shows up. And you need to know the stories that you are telling yourself in order to get ahead of this. Okay. So let's talk about a couple tools, okay? And I'm gonna talk about time management too in here. So there's two tools. I'm gonna send you out the actual guides on these afterwards. The first tool is thinking about your mental RAM as an emotional bank account, okay? So kind of like a bank account, we do things that enrich us, that nourish us, that make us feel really great, and we do things that deplete us. For a moment, let's do this. Grab a piece of paper or open up like just a document on your computer. And I want you to write down 4 activities that you find you do often, okay? 4 activities with any given week, and it can be whatever. It can be something school-related, work-related, life-related. You can dig into Netflix super hard. I don't know why I wrote that. Or gardening, or whatever. What are 4 things you do every single week without fail? Write down those 4 things quick. Just on a piece of paper, not in the chat, okay? First 4 things that come to your mind. And if you want to even tighten it up, like what are 4 things you do every day? What's in 4 activities? Give it a little more color than that. If it's technology, yeah, like say what it is, but yeah, you don't have to go too deep. Okay, so write down 4 things, 4 activities that are very regular in your life. Okay, now, next to each of those, I want you to write down on a scale of 0 to 10, how nourished it makes you feel. So, for example, my example here, gardening. I have a little house now. I learned recently that I love gardening. I can go out and pull a weed for like 2 minutes and it energizes me in a big way. It nourishes me. I can come back to something and think it through. It's a way to break up my cycle. It's great. I actually put gardening into my calendar now, many days, not today because I'm not at home, because it's a reminder that I have to take that time for nourishment. So that's super nourishing. Whereas I will totally hang out and watch Netflix all the time with my fiance, and she gets a lot out of it. She feels very energized by watching Love Island. I hate it with a passion. And so I find it doesn't nourish me at all. But I do it anyway. So give everything a score really quickly. And I know some of you are thinking, we go to Waterloo. This is really straightforward. Just do it. Don't overthink it, just do it. Okay. So now you have 4 things and then 4 numbers next to it. I will bet that the things that you find most nourishing of those 4, more often than not, you barely make time for them. You probably deprioritize it, you probably squeeze it down a little bit, you put it off, you tell yourself you don't have the time, you don't have the energy, you don't have the right to do that thing. And I'm gonna bet that you default to a couple activities that are probably low on the nourishment scale often. Did I nail it? Or some of you, maybe you do your high nourishing activities all the time, in which case, fantastic, you are in charge of your emotional bank account. Why this is so critical is because the one resource we have in life that is not renewable is time. And time is essential to have more mastery over in order for you to have healthy habits that will limit your stress, okay? Being stressed out, especially when you're in school, can come from the belief that all you have to do is work. You just have to work, 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 study, 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 and if you don't, you're gonna fail, bad things will happen, right? Now, what I would counter you, and this is a whole other session that I can happily do for Waterloo in the future, but I would happily challenge you to ask yourself, is all the time that I'm actually studying or working, am I using that time effectively? Am I actually focused and in the zone and delivering on the task I need to. You know what the definition of productivity is? The definition of productivity is doing what you say you will within the period scheduled. But most of us don't. Most of us have lots of time. We get lost, we get sidetracked, we get exhausted, we start scrolling, we engage in low nourishing activities. And so I am giving each of you permission, not that, like, who the hell am I to give you permission? I don't mean it that way. I'm giving you permission through this exercise to realize the things that you already do in your day-to-day life that are high nourishing for you. And I want you to schedule that thing in your calendar regularly, whether it's every day, every couple days. So if one of the activities that you engage in that's high nourishment takes an hour, you know, maybe do it once or twice a week. If it's something that takes you like a minute, 30 seconds, 5 minutes, if it's listening to a happy song, watching a YouTube video, whatever, put it in your calendar every day and do it. You will be more productive because you're refilling your emotional bank account. Now, this is just like white labeling basic psychology concepts, but in effect, you are cutting off the stress cycle. And when you cut off the stress cycle and get refocused on something that you feel in control over and something that you feel energized and excited by, it has lasting benefits, okay? So there's one tool. The next tool, and I'm going to send you this worksheet, and this is a great thing to do. And honestly, it's a really good question to ask when you're doing stuff. If you're like, I'm doing a lot of this thing, but I really just not really doing anything for me, then do less of it, right? Or find a way to make it more nourishing. Okay, then this one is my favorite. How are we doing for time? Okay, so we got about 5 minutes to go. So we have something called the stress action worksheet. There's something called the 4A model of stress management. And what I love about this model is that if we are in a place where, so say you spotted that you have an unhelpful thinking style going on a lot, right? Red flag, I'm feeling stressed. And you do like a little bit of breath work for a second, or you go do a high nourishing activity. It's like, so then what do you do? I want to invite you to consider that maybe all stress doesn't have to be dealt with in a way that's just like getting rid of it. Maybe we have more choices around what to do with stress. And in fact, we do. There's 4 different things that we can do with any specific stress score. Now, what's important to acknowledge on this at the beginning of this exercise is that stress, so we use a lot of words very freely when we talk about this stuff. So we typically, when we say I'm stressed, we are talking about feeling a bunch of different stressors that are both like, that are basically compounding. So if I say I'm stressed about money, I feel like I'm behind on a bunch of stuff, stressed about my relationship, whatever, right? There's a bunch of things. Each of those are stressors. They are singular things. So here we are talking about the individual stressors. One of the biggest fallacies of stress management, and a lot of the mindfulness stuff that's out there, and a lot, just a lot of the pop culture conversations on managing stress, is we act like stress is just one thing. That's not so. We feel stressed because there's too many individual stressors and we don't have the resources to meet that demand. And we also feel powerless too, like it's happening to us. So this process is all about gaining control over individual stressors. So grab a piece of paper, and I want you to write down quickly the top, some of the top stressors that you are experiencing right now, right? So like when you think, ooh, I'm stressed, like what's actually going on underneath that? What are you stressed about? Write down 4 things. So like, I'm stressed about money, I'm stressed about not having enough time, I'm stressed about this grade I got, I'm stressed about this opportunity that I don't know what to do with, I'm stressed because my partner's mad at me, I'm stressed because my parents are mad at me, I'm stressed because I'm not happy, I'm stressed because, like whatever it is, just write it down individually. And try to get fairly granular with it, right? Like you don't do yourself any service by saying like, I'm stressed about life. Like what is it, what parts of life? Like cut it down a bit. So write down 4 stressors, individual, that you are experiencing right now. I'll give you like 10 seconds to do that. And then next to it, again, rate it. How aggressive is that stressor? How much is it impacting you? 1 is like super mild, and 10 is a lot. What do I mean by stressors? Dania, good question. So just to reiterate, so when we say we are stressed, we are referring to accumulation of different stressors. So a stressor is a, just said that funny, but a stressor is one single thing that we're stressed about that's causing us stress. So a stressor might be like, let's get really granular. I got a bad grade on an assignment. That is a stressor, okay? Or I currently don't have money in my bank account. That is a stressor. Or I do not have enough time to do this assignment. That is a stressor, right? It's a single thing that's causing you stress. Okay, so once you've written down 4 stressors that you're experiencing right now, and you've given it a rating from 1 to 10, okay? I want you to then think about each of them critically. And to do that, we're going to talk about what the 4 A's are. So when you are looking at any single stressor, there are 4 different paths you can take, okay? So they are avoid, alter, accept, and adapt. And when you are looking critically at this, you need to decide, what am I going to do? Because you know that this stress is depleting you, that it's frustrating you, that it's upsetting, that it's hard. You want to do something about it. So here's what you do. You have to make a decision. Am I going to avoid it? And so that is where, if you have the ability to say to the entire stress, or can you just get rid of it? Can I say, you know, I'm not even going to deal with this thing. I don't want to be part of this thing. I don't have to do this thing. And then focus on the things you can control. Sometimes we tend to be involved in things that don't really serve us. Like, you know, maybe you're part of like a committee or a club, or you told your parents that you would plan a specific thing and you don't have capacity or time or energy, but you did out of guilt. So it's causing you stress. You didn't actually have to be part of it or do it, but you did anyway. Now it's causing you a lot of stress. Can you get rid of it? So that's the first thing. Oftentimes we can cut out a lot of what's stressing us, but other times we can't. So that's the first one. And if you can go and avoid all the things that you're stressed out about, that's fantastic. But in reality, that's probably not the case, right? So the second is alter. So what can you do to change the circumstances about the stressor, right? So for example, if you are stressed that you are doing poorly in a course right now because you got a bad grade on a recent assignment, what can you do to change the circumstances of that? I know that sounds really basic, but like, is there a way to get makeup points from an extra assignment? Is there a way to get tutoring or support? Is there a way to meet with the professor and talk about why you got the grade that you did so that you can work critically through the problem, right? Email a TA asking for feedback, exactly. Because when you do that, it's not just about addressing the fact that you got a bad grade, it's also, just as importantly, it's letting you to decide what you are going to do with that stressor, right? It brings a sense of control. When we feel stressed, we don't feel like we are in control of the things that are happening in our life. So this is, you're going to say, I'm going to alter and change what I can do. I'm going to change what I can do as I respond to this stressor, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, so that's the second one. The third is accept it. So simply accepting the way things are. Sometimes things are stressful. Sometimes things suck. Sometimes things happen, and that's not great, but you just have to accept it because life's hard and sometimes stress is unavoidable. Okay, so it's just getting very clear about that. And then the fourth is adapt. How can I adjust my expectations and reframe my thinking around this stressor, right? So if I'm stressed because I'm feeling, like right now, I'll tell you, I feel really isolated from a bunch of my best friends. Seriously, this isn't me joking. Like I feel super, super lonely and isolated right now. And what I've been practicing myself, because I get very stressed about that, because I feel like I'm being a bad friend, I start telling myself all these stories about how I'm letting other people down and blah, blah, blah. I've adjusted my expectations to say, okay, maybe I am not as connected as I have been to some of my best friends in recent months, okay? And I need to forgive myself because we're living in a pandemic and I am so tired of FaceTiming all of the time. That's okay. So it's not that I'm being a bad friend. It's that I'm having a difficult time connecting with the people I love because I'm exhausted, right? That is a way of having control. I'm acknowledging that something is going on outside of me just feeling bad that is contributing to the thing that's stressing me out. And I'm reframing my thinking by being more forgiving of myself in light of that. Okay? So these four things are powerful because, again, it gives you a choice of what you do. So all of a sudden, it's not just stress is happening to you. It's like almost like each stressor is like playing this game of like hot potato. It's like, hey, I'm stressed. And then you get to decide what you're going to do with that hot potato. Where are you going to throw it? What are you going to do with it? That was a bad analogy. So go back to your list quickly. And again, write down 3 or 4 things that are stressing you right now, the rating of that, and then what action you can take based on the 4 A's, okay? So in this case, for example, so being stuck at home, super stressful, right? A lot of us feel really cooped up, we feel stuck, we're living with roommates or with a family or with friends or alone, we're just really struggling with that. So how can I work out at home and increase my social connection through FaceTime? Not a good example based on the story I just gave, but for real, like how can I alter my existence right now to address that? Or online learning. I have to accept that this is tough and seek out support. So maybe I need to have a mentor or extra tutoring support or a more ergonomic setup at home or whatever I need in order to feel more comfortable with online learning. And then if I'm feeling worried about family, because things are crazy right now, my parents are pretty old, like I'm really worried about them. How can I adapt? So how can I see that as an opportunity to reconnect with them, even though they're far away? So these 4 things right here, and again, I'll send out the worksheet and I'll have the definitions on it and everything. These 4 are the choices that you have, okay? We all have a choice when it comes to stress. As I said at the beginning, stress is unavoidable, but how we respond to it, we very much have some autonomy over. And so I hope in this session, it gave us a combination of a little bit of context around how stress shows up, how we respond to it, and what we can do. Again, I'm just gonna reiterate here really quickly because it's super, super important. If you catch yourself stressed out, or if you don't catch that, but you catch yourself doing one of these a lot, it means you're stressed. More often than not, it means you're stressed. So you need to pause, okay, and take a moment. You need to do something that is nourishing for you. If not in the moment, then regularly within your calendar. And then you need to aggressively decide what you are going to do with the stressors that are showing up repeatedly in your life. If you do all of those steps, how you deal with stress will be changed for a very, very long time. But it takes practice. It's not something that you can just start doing willy-nilly. It takes you actually, like, seriously sitting down with this and thinking it through. It takes being aware of the unhelpful thinking styles of how stress shows up for you. It means being willing to slow down and look at what this stressor is, what story you're telling yourself about that stressor, and then responding to it. As they say, it's that easy and it's that hard. So let's talk about what's available for you for support, and then we're gonna wrap up here, okay? So within any campus community, there's a lot of support, okay? I want you to know, as someone that runs a huge, like we support a couple 100,000 college and university students, not Waterloo students though, but as someone that runs a massive program like that, I can tell you that more and more students are reaching out for support from therapists, which is great. And therapists can totally help with stress stuff. Like for anyone that hasn't been to therapy before, it's not what you think often. It's not like you go in and they're like, oh, now this wouldn't happen anyway. But we have the image in our minds of like, you know, you going in and then being like, sit down, and you like lay down on a chaise lounge and they're like, tell me about your most painful childhood moment. Like that's not how it works, like most of the time. If you go in and you're really tactical and you're saying, hey, I'm having a lot of anxiety around this course or this upcoming exam that I need for professional certification or whatever, like they will help you with it. They will teach and go deeper on tools like these. These are literally session tools that are used in therapy sessions by our team, okay? So this is what it's like. So reach out to counseling, they got your back, okay? Open up to someone you trust. If you know anyone that's in here as a peer, like if you recognize their name, or if you're sitting next to someone that's also watching this right now, which would be really funny, like have a dialogue around this afterwards. Normalize this conversation of stress, and don't just talk about it in a weird, superficial, high-level way. Oh, I'm really stressed. Oh, I'm really stressed too. Oh, that sucks. Like, no, like talk about, I'm feeling really stressed. I'm doing these unhelpful thinking styles. I have all these different individual stressors that are meaning that I'm out of balance. And I really want to think about what of the 4 A's I can do to properly address these 3. That's the kind of conversation you need to have to support yourself and support your friends. If you want to get deeper into apps and tools that are out there, there are a ton. If for those of you looking up The study habits and timing were asked about a little bit, and I didn't properly deal with it head on. But the gist of it, one of the things that most people will benefit from, because it lessens your stress and gives you a sense of control, is using something called the Pomodoro method. Go to the App Store and type in Pomodoro app, and you will see a bunch of different things. It's a timer system so that you can focus in intervals. And there's a specific way to get your tasks organized to focus on execution. And then you celebrate at the end. So you'll work for like 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break, then 25 minutes, a 5-minute break, then 25 minutes, then a 5-minute break. Then the last 25 minutes, then you get an hour break. Then you come back and you do that again and again. If you do that, you will get more done, and you're giving yourself permission to take breaks because it's pre-scheduled in at the end of working hard. So Pomodoro method, look it up, read about it on Google, download an app. There's a bunch of them. It's fantastic. Okay. So, and that's just one thing, but there's so many different apps out there. If you're curious about doing more active breath work and meditation, like download Calm. It's great. There's a bunch of other ones out there. If you're looking for anonymous peer support, go to Big White Wall or go to 7 Cups. There are so many good options out there. And why I do the exercise I did at the top is most of us will not see good support if we believe that we are alone. If we believe that we're the only ones struggling, we are going to be super resistant. And so that's why we do that activity of the anonymous texting first. Because if we accept that we're all in this together, then guess what? Talking about it, opening up about it, finding solutions about it, it's all of a sudden not that weird. We also have, for anyone that is kind of feeling like I'm not taking care of myself the way I need to. So Real Campus is our student mental health program that I mentioned. Waterloo students aren't covered, sorry. But you can go and take this course for free. Just go, it's really good. So it's just at go.realcampus.ca/rethink, or if you go to realcampus.ca, I think it's right there on the home page. It's all about making self-care stick for you. And Jalen, who teaches it, she's my colleague, she is phenomenal, okay? Because self-care isn't about bubble baths and getting massages and stuff. It's about doing small things that are super nourishing for you and then making them a priority. And that goes very far in managing our stress, okay? So just a little plug for that because it's free and it's easy. It takes about 45 minutes to go through, and it'll be great. So with that, I wanna say that you've got this. Thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for sharing. Look, showing up for a session on stress management is a great start. Most people don't. So thank you for being here. Give yourself some credit for that. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna follow up with an email with the worksheets that I promised. And just know that a lot of people have your back. A lot of people want to see you be successful. And I hope that we can do more of these sessions if you found them helpful. This is a very general stress management session, but there's so many different ways that we can cut up the subject and get really focused and granular. So thank you for being here. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you to Kiara and the team for making this session happen. And I hope that we see you again soon. And I think I'm getting kicked out of my room. Awesome. My pleasure. Wonderful. Well, thanks so much, folks. Thank you for being here. Don't think